Thank you so much for joining, everyone. And thank you to Steph for your tireless work. My goodness, I don't know how you're not more frazzled than you are. So hopefully you've got time for a break next week. And we've got a wonderful panel. We've got Rachel and Sam, and we are going to be talking about getting childlessness into the EDI agenda at work. We're going to be talking about our own experiences, so the opportunities we've had, and we're also going to address the hurdles as well. So what we'll do, we'll just introduce ourselves and then we will get straight in. So we've got some questions, but we're trying not to make it too rigid at the same time, but structure is always nice for me in a way, flexible structure. So I'm Katie Schnitzler and I am an academic by background. So I was a lecturer for many years. I started in FE with college age young people, and then I moved into university teaching. So since then, I've started a PhD, which is in the areas that we're discussing today. And I also founded a company called Mist Workshops Limited, and I'll tell you a bit more about that a bit later. But yeah, if you're happy to go, Rachel, are you happy to introduce yourself next?
I am. Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everybody, from myself and one of my little peons, Rudy. I live over in Derby. I'm 41 years old. I work part-time for myself as a psychotherapeutic breath worker and part-time as a business improvement manager at a corporate firm that I've been at for 20 years now, which is crazy. It's got 40 to 45,000 people in it globally. Um, so yeah, as part of the business improvement manager role, I've also taken on the position of the Childless Not by Choice representative for the company as part of the sort of diversity and inclusion family and carers alliance. That's been really exciting. Um, been officially childless for probably the last 6 or 7 years. And during that time, I've just basically been focusing these last 6 or 7 years on my own personal healing journey and just understanding how I can help other people in that place. And one of those ways is by being involved in my company's diversity and inclusion effort.
Thank you so much. And Sam?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam. I am childless, not by choice, following 6 years of unsuccessful fertility treatment in my 30s. And I work as a technical writer. And it's such an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. So we're going to talk about our motivations for working in this space, raising awareness about childlessness at work. So Sam, are you happy to go first?
Yeah, I do feel as though I'm in the presence of greatness here, which I'm kind of I'm not necessarily feeling that that's wonderful kind of thing. But hopefully there'll be some interesting little nuggets here. But I guess I've always been pretty quiet about my childlessness. Not really speaking about it publicly. I guess I felt a lot of shame around it, um, and stigma and everything, and a sense of failure. But at work, I found that human resources, HR, was starting to talk more about fertility issues, and they released a fertility policy. But it was all about support during treatment, which is great, obviously. But there was no mention at all that one of the outcomes of fertility treatment is childlessness, or certainly no support, if that's the case. And I was seeing more and more communications about parents' benefits, baby pictures, bring baby to work, etc. And they launched a new diversity and inclusion site, which had a parent network, but again, no mention of childlessness. And I guess I was feeling, more and more kind of triggered and started to kind of feel angry, I guess. Something kind of changed in me, and that feeling, for the first time, that I felt I needed to speak out, it was kind of more powerful than wanting to stay quiet. So I was quite surprised about that myself, to be honest. So I wrote to our HR director, kind of summoned up the courage, about the triggers, that we're facing in the workplace, and absolutely, want to say early on, it's, not about reducing benefits for parents. It was nothing about that, but to just have our kind of life experience included, recognise that treatment isn't always successful, and to just suggest more inclusion, of the childless experience in management training, raise more awareness of the triggers. So that was what initially motivated me. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that. It's always so difficult to do, sharing your own experience. So thank you. And also sorry for, what you've been through. It's just amazing that you can use that to help others. How about yourself, Rachel? Yeah, what made you want to raise awareness of childlessness at work?
Yeah, so I really resonate with some of the things that Sam's sharing there. And one of the things that's actually missing in my corporate workplace is a policy. So, I went through a lot of fertility treatment for years, and losses, and I was really blessed with the great line managers, but there was no policy, absolutely no guidance on what happens when you're going through treatment, what happens when the treatment's successful and then you lose, and what happens when the treatment's not successful. And yeah, thank goodness for those line managers. But yeah, what about everyone else? What about everyone else? So I think it was about 18 months ago, I saw our diversity and inclusion calendar and all these events with all these different groups of people. And I was like, where's World Childless Week? Where's Wave of Light? Where's anything for any of us? And why on earth was I so silent in the workplace? As if like I was the only person in the world going through this. Everyone else seemed to be a parent. Like Sam said, everyone's sharing pictures without asking you. And just, yeah, so many things that we go through as childless people. And I just kind of, in that instant, I went onto we have like a social media. I went straight on there and I was like, where is it? Where? And we have a head of diversity and inclusion, and they came straight back to me and said, if you would like to get involved. And before she kind of finished the sentence, I was like, yes, please. So I think like my own lived experience made me really want to get involved. My passion for other people, especially people that still felt like they were in that silent phase, that alone phase, I just really wanted to speak out for those people and let them know that they are seen, they are heard, they are valued, and that people like me are going to be working to create policies and create support networks and speak out and share. So yes, I was made we called me the CNBC representative, and since then I've been made the co-chair of the alliance. So I changed the name of it to Family Carers and Childless Alliance. Yeah. So yes, yeah, all of these things just made me really want to get involved and speak out. Really.
Thank you so much for that. And again, hats off to you for sharing your experience and actually, sharing that with your workplace and getting childless to be, included in that title. I think that's huge because it really helps other people to come forward. It's not hidden within some really broad kind of community or group I think that's amazing. So usually I kind of third person my story, and I kind of use my research to inform workplaces. So talking from a personal experience is not something I usually do. And I'm aware this is going on YouTube as well. So I'm just like, I've got notes and I don't know. Yeah, I mean, what I'm going to tell you is something I couldn't even really talk about to my own family and closest friends, let alone colleagues and managers. But in 2016, I lost a baby, and it was just the most traumatic thing that ever happened to me. And I have been through other difficult life events. I lost my dad as well. And yeah, so it was just so isolating. And on top of that, all of my closest friends, so four other, friends, they got pregnant that same year. And it was just so hard. But what I did, I just used work as a kind of escape. And ultimately, I just didn't confide in anyone. I just kept going. But I found the workplace to actually be psychologically unsafe for me. And I hadn't really noticed these triggers before because, it didn't occur to me. I just thought when you want to try for children, it just happens. It's plain sailing. I didn't know about the stats for pregnancy loss, 1 in 4 pregnancies ending in loss. And yeah, I'd never really heard of childlessness because I just thought people that didn't have kids, I thought they just didn't want them because that's what sex ed had taught me. That's what films had taught me. Everyday discourses had taught me. So yeah, it was really hard because I was actually teaching child psychology at the time. So my counselor was like, how are you? Because, obviously every conversation is about children, babies, in what I was teaching. So yeah, it was really hard. And then on top of that, I had students who would ask me outright, are you pregnant? Just because of my age, I think. And yeah, people just kind of assuming that I had kids, like one student said to me, oh, you understand the juggle because, you have kids, don't you? And, you have to say no, and then it's awkward, isn't it? And it's like, oh, so yeah, that's been my motivation really. Just the triggering environment and really realizing that work wasn't that escape and that kind of positive environment for me anymore. And I'd always loved work, I'd always been ambitious. But just to share a couple more examples, if you don't mind. So it was induction week, and I was just giving the whole kind of spiel about my background and what I'd studied and how long I'd been teaching. And this student was just like, oh, well, do you have kids? And it was in front of a whole cohort of new students. And I had to say no. And then she just hit her hand on the table and she was just like, that explains it then. That's why you're successful. And I was just so like, because I just thought if she knew, yeah. So other things that happened at work. So this lady who I didn't know, it was at lunchtime and I was in the lunchroom, with a colleague, and she just said, oh, most people I know regret having kids. And I just felt like I'm not imagining this. Like this is everywhere, this pronatal environment. And so what I did, I actually started a PhD on this area because I did have a look, came across Dr. Robin Hadley's work, actually, who's I've seen, he's in the audience. Hi, Robin. And yeah, I just couldn't really come across much other work in this area. And I thought this can't just be me. I looked at the stats. So yeah, that's what started my work in this space. And then I didn't just want, because I came across so much lived experience that resonated with my own story, but also I learned new things all the time from these interviews. And I didn't want it to just get dusty on a shelf. I thought I need to help. I need to do something more than just write this thesis. I need to use this thesis to help people. So that's what I've done. So I've set up missed workshops, and that's what we do now. So we train companies about childlessness, but also miscarriage, infertility. Yeah, so I find it therapeutic, but also quite difficult sometimes, which I know we're going to discuss the hurdles. And but yeah, thank you so much for listening to that. And sorry if it came across as just all over the place. I'm used to just kind of using other people's stories to inform the cause, if that makes sense. And that gives me lots of confidence. And I don't worry that I'm going to wobble and get upset. So thank you for bearing with me. The next topic we're going to explore. So actually what we've achieved within our place of work and maybe other places of work. So Rachel, are you happy to go first on this one?
I am. Yes. So your shares are really touching me, guys. So bear with me. Yes. So, achieved. Yeah, a few things. I mean, we're in the middle of, or coming to the back end of World Childless Week, and it's been a crazy week. I know there's lots of people working really hard, and it's just been really exciting. So, if I sort of start off a little bit from where I left off on the last share, since becoming the sort of Childless Not by Choice representative, I've worked with this Family Carers and Childless Alliance to create a strategy. So it's communications, calendars for the year, bringing in policies, setting up support networks and sort of private groups in the workplace. So that was one of the very first things that I put together. And to be honest, for the first few months after we put it together, it took time to really find where to fit and how to really leverage it within the alliance. And I feel like this week has really helped galvanize things. So I kick this week off, for example, we can have it's called Being Like Me. So we have an intranet site that everyone globally can access. And sometimes people post their stories to raise awareness for situations in their life that other people might be going through. So after not sharing even with my best friends before, I've got to the point where I can share with 40-odd thousand people, which was different. So I shared on Monday, my story was published globally, and I've shared every day the topics for World Childless Week all across our different social networks. We've got posters up all around the business. I've got my background on these virtual meetings has World Childless Week 2024. It's got one of the banners, and I've been spreading them like wildfire. So yes, we've created enamel pins that are that people are going to wear to raise awareness. They're little terriers, involuntary childlessness. They're super cute. So I've been sort of circulating the link for that. And yeah, it's been a crazy week. I've had uncountable messages, emails, direct messages, messages on the personal share, messages on the topics for the week. It's created amazing engagement, and yeah, it's been overwhelming in a really great way. But I really feel like we've started to make this week's help to really start making that dent. And that's what's enabled me to say, right, we're going to change the name of this alliance, because what childless person is going to think, oh, I'm part of the Family and Carers Alliance? So, changing the name. I had the last check I had of my Being Like Me story, over 3,000 people had read it, over 300 likes on it. So I've yes, more, and it will stay up, so people will keep getting that. Yeah, the challenges will be an interesting one, because sometimes putting your head above the parapet and all that, but I know we're going to come on to that next. So yeah, raising awareness, that's been massive this week, getting it officially on the agenda, changing the name, getting these pins out there. So yeah, it's been exciting and scary and healing, and I found really beautiful people to collaborate with. And yeah, my heart's a bit I feel really grateful to have found these people and made them want to speak up, but also the people that are reaching out to me saying, I'm going through that at the moment. Thank you so much, and can we connect? Just makes it all so worth it.
That is just amazing. Yeah, I just think it's so incredible that you could use, what's been so difficult and painful for you to help other people now. Um, and just, yeah, what you set up. And I'm sure you might touch on this later, but I'm just wondering if just your organization as a whole have maybe just had more people feeling able to speak out, because it's like you've welcomed the conversation into work in so many different ways. Um, and I wonder if you've ever had anyone kind of say to you, "Oh, I've never told anyone until now because of the work you've done." I'm just wondering if, yeah, you've
Yeah,
had
quite a few actually. I did a bit of a share a few months ago. There was a post and it said, "Tell people something that they don't know about you." And I was like, okay, well, I'm childless and it's not by choice. And sometimes when people say this, it's this, you know. And I had quite a few people email me, even on that one, just like things like, so thank you so much for saying it. I don't think they were saying, I don't feel like I couldn't post on your post because I don't want people to see me differently. And it just, yeah, heartbreaking. So I'm like, we need to break down this stigma. And yeah, I just feel super passionate about it.
That's amazing. Sam, how about yourself?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I kind of summoned up this courage to write to our HR director. And I work for quite a large technology company, so obviously hoping that it will create some change and ripples. Um, so I had kind of quite a long list of requests and suggestions for my HR director, which was probably a bit ambitious looking back. But it was kind of everything came out in that email. So she didn't necessarily implement all of that, perhaps not unsurprisingly, but she did agree to add World Childless Week to our diversity and inclusion calendar, which they've now done for 2 years without me prompting them. So perhaps it's a small gain, but I feel it's a start to at least have some representation there. Um, but it also kind of encouraged me to start writing to other organisations who may have some influence to make changes in the workplace. And I noticed that the CIPD, the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, who are like an HR management association, they had just released a fertility policy. So I also wrote to them about the inclusion of childlessness and the triggers and issues at work. And I did actually get a response from one of their senior policy advisors, Rachel Suff. And she said, thank you for all of the information and evidence around this topic, and that they would definitely look to expand their content and messaging in this area. So, I feel quite pleased. At least something is happening, perhaps, or at least she's acknowledged that something needs to be done. So perhaps, although the change is not that as dramatic as I would like. I do feel that slowly, in small steps, we're kind of creating these small ripples of awareness, and perhaps helping the people who do influence policy to recognise the experience of childlessness in the workplace and hopefully start to be more inclusive. So, as I say, really, perhaps they're small changes, but it's a start.
I need your help, Sam. The policy for my company is on the agenda for next year. So, I would love, to see what you've done and still with pride.
Thank you.
So that we can enact the sorts of changes that you are as well.
Amazing. Yeah, Sam, I think you're very modest and humble about your achievements. I mean, CIPD, huge. I actually know Rachel Suff because she's done a lot of the pregnancy loss initiative and getting that recognized at work. So yeah, she's fantastic. Um, so yeah, as I mentioned earlier, so the work that I've done with organizations is I've set up formal training. So that's what my organization focuses on. And we've actually expanded just due to demand and need and people requesting different things. So yeah, the main thing we offer is obviously the training and awareness raising. And we offer people from, that workplace to come and share their story if they want to. So we have a panel, and that's been really well received. So they've kind of got like the academic side and the stats and everything like that I deliver. And then they've actually got lived experience from, someone or people within the company, which is always really nice. And yeah, other things I kind of train on include, responding to this issue. How can we support it throughout the year as well? What things can we do? So another thing I get asked to do is policy review, or sometimes I tell them that that's what I recommend because sometimes people don't know. But yeah, because I know that you're going to be aware of this, but a lot of the policies can be quite parent-centric, and they can ignore the needs of people who don't have children. So things like looking at their flexible working policy, for example, their hybrid or work from home policy, all those kind of things. And also looking at their informal practices as well with line managers. And so I do line manager training, HR training, and all colleagues as well. So yeah, other things I've helped create, so childless champions, so mental health first aiders, actually training them and just recommending that companies have them as well, because obviously, if people have their lived experience and they want to be the champion, they don't always need the training from me, but some people want to learn more, so I train mental health first aiders and champions as well. I encourage organizations to have like a hub of resources on their intranet. So it's got all books, podcasts, websites, forums, anywhere they can turn. And just having that visible has, so the training and the other bits and the resources, people have said to me that it's just made it like a welcome conversation. People feel more able to talk about what they're going through, just having it there. And what else have I done? Help set up like working groups and support groups specifically for people who are childless, because what I was finding is, so some companies would say, oh, we've got a working group for people going through fertility treatment, for example. But what they might not necessarily recognize is that that group isn't okay for people to be belong to anymore if they stop treatment, including if they have a successful pregnancy, and it's too triggering for people in that group. So yeah, encouraging that kind of setup of a separate group, and just adding World Childlessness Week to the calendars. I've also helped companies to try and address this throughout the whole year, which I'll talk about a bit later, how I've done that. And I'm really happy if people want to, use that, because I've found it's really helpful. So I'll speak about that in more detail later. But yeah, it's amazing how well received this topic has been. And just how many people have disclosed to their workplaces. And then that's made, people who might not know about this topic, they've been like, oh, okay, yeah, we've had disclosures from senior managers who have been going through this and no one ever knew, So I've worked with small companies, medium, but also large global companies as well. And it's just amazing how much traction. So it's to a point now where I do this full time. I do obviously train about other topics as well, but yeah, it's just been amazing. Universities engaging. I've helped charities as well. So the Miscarriage Association and Miss, they're based in Scotland. I've helped them to add this to their, like their websites and just recognizing that not everybody gets a rainbow baby, not everyone, has a successful pregnancy after fertility treatment. So yeah, I've helped them as well. Names that I know I can say. I'm rubbish at like asking companies, can I use you on my website? I always forget that part. But this is fresh. So Diageo and Cadent Gas. So I ran those two training sessions this week in collaboration with Fertility Matters at Work. And I've helped Fertility Matters at Work to get this conversation into, their agenda as well, because they're mostly talking about fertility. Zurich, Southwest Rail. So we'll talk more about the issues later, but one thing I do find is that a way in is definitely through my work on pregnancy loss and infertility. Those topics seem to be gaining more traction, similar to menopause. I think those topics are slightly, under the radar compared to menopause, but hopefully we'll see change. So sometimes that's my way in. So I can kind of say, you're looking at pregnancy loss, you're looking at infertility, that's amazing. Have you considered childlessness? And so many people are just like, oh, no, didn't even know that was a thing, So that is a way in, and it can be difficult. But yeah, I'll talk about the hurdle a bit later. But yeah, I'd say like the most important part of the training is definitely the kind of responding and supporting someone. So many people from HR and line managers have said, I now feel confident if someone comes to me and I know the right thing to say. And I also know what to avoid, the solution stuff. So I go through all the toxic positivity and, they just say it's really a very useful part. But yeah, actually, should we talk about the hurdles now? Because it is the next topic. Is that okay? That flowed in quite well, actually. So one of the issues I find is, of course, getting in that way. So yeah, not many people know it's a topic in its own right. And also the fact that then it's not always connected to pregnancy loss and infertility. That can be quite difficult to get out of people's minds, that there's so many more reasons. I do find sometimes some of the triggers. So I raise awareness about the triggers, like the pregnancy announcements and baby showers, that kind of thing. Those triggers can continue after a time when the training's ended. So it's that engagement and trying to get them to recognize this throughout the whole year. That can be quite hard. And yeah, getting them to engage outside of World Childless Week as well. So I can tell you a little bit about how I get around that. And as I say, please feel free to adopt. So I use the other awareness raising days, weeks. So things like Movember, getting this into the conversation about male mental health, adding childlessness in there, can be a really good way to kind of, okay, you can talk about all other things as well here. Neurodiversity, just about it in general, like mental health. And then, yeah, just adding that there. World Mental Health Day, you can tie it in with obviously Fertility Awareness Week, Baby Loss Awareness Week, talk about it within anything that you can think of. So I developed this diagram, actually. It's on my LinkedIn somewhere. And yeah, it's got all of the events that I think that you can piggyback them onto. But it's just a really good way. And I found actually companies then engage throughout the whole year. Okay, they might not talk about it at every event, but they're not just covering it once a year and then they've ticked a box. Yeah, I'm just looking here. I'm sure Rachel and Sam, you totally get this, because the onus is often on individuals to invite the issue into their organization. So some people contact me and they're saying, I don't want to be the face of this. I don't actually want to tell HR. Can you help me to get in? So yeah, okay, you can cold email, but sometimes, I mean, I don't do that. I don't cold email, I don't cold call. But it can be really hard because then that person feels very exposed. So yeah, that's another issue. And then just lastly, the issue of sometimes parents feeling as though, okay, something's going to be taken away from us. And I always try and describe this in the training as it's a bit like, true feminism. It's not meant to take anything away from men, it's meant to just be creating this equity. Um, but I think sometimes it might feel as though, oh, we're going to have things taken away from us. So it's trying to educate. So within the training, I really try to cover, the importance of keeping the flexible, approach for parents and making sure that, yeah, you are given, leniency if someone's late from a school run, but equally giving that leniency for someone who doesn't have children and they're late, you know? So yeah, those are my kind of obstacles. But I wonder if, Sam, did you mind touching on some of the hurdles you've come across?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, initially, of course, I had to overcome my own fear that I didn't have a valid reason to speak out. I mean, it's been, many years since my treatment, but when you actually look at the issues that, the childless face in the workplace, there are absolutely valid issues of exclusion and unequal treatment. And I also had to face the fact that probably I'm the only person to speak up about this, even in quite a large company. So therefore, HR don't see it as a broad issue that they need to deal with. Um, but so to demonstrate that this is a bigger issue, it's not just me complaining kind of thing. Um, I included, the figures of the numbers of people that this affects from the Office of National Statistics, which Jodie Day kindly supplied in all of her amazing resources, and other resources that I also found really helpful. To also send to HR was Jodie's Inclusive Growth podcast that she did with Toby Milden, who is a leading EDI consultant. That was really, really helpful. And also, of course, World Childless Week, fantastic, which is a global event. So, it's to show that it's not just me saying these things, there are a number of people, not insignificant number of people affected by this. And I was kind of saying to HR things like, people should be allowed to opt in to see baby pictures, baby showers, that kind of thing, or perhaps even, discourage people from sharing their baby pictures. And they did push back. They were kind of saying, well, we want people to bring their whole selves to work, as they called it, show their baby pictures or whatever. And all the resources, the amazing resources available, that kind of helped me to explain, that particularly the childless, not by choice, we can't bring our whole selves to work. We can't talk about our childless experience because quite often we get the bingo comments, and the judgments. And any other kind of project or life experience that we share, it's not given the same kind of recognition as the typical parental milestones. Um, so this is exclusion, really. And Jodie's podcast also really helped. Going back to what you mentioned about, it's absolutely not about reducing parental benefits or anything like that. As she really nicely puts it in that podcast, we're kind of hoping to expand inclusion. We want the inclusion pie to be bigger so that we can have a piece of that pie as well, which I thought was quite nicely put. So using those resources, using kind of facts and figures was helpful for me, to say it wasn't just a personal issue. And also, I included the fact that inclusive employers who run National Inclusion Week, they've included World Childless Week in their diversity calendar, which is a really good reference. So I found it was important to get across to HR. It's not just individuals talking about our personal grievance, this is a broader issue. And it's just that everyone else is kind of shamed into not speaking out, for fear of the judgment. So those were kind of the main challenges that I faced and how I overcame them. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And how about you, Rachel?
Yeah, something that's sort of striking me as I'm sitting listening to you guys and witnessing the comments that are coming through in the chat is how different we all are, and that we can all make a difference in our own ways. And I love, like, Sam, for example, you're using data and facts and really showing this broader element of things. Whereas and what you were saying about Katie, about not everyone or often people don't want to be the face of what's going on. So I feel like I've got a sort of a different, I'm sort of on the different side of the coin, where I've gone, well, I'll stand up. And so a lot of mine has been more like getting comfortable in the uncomfortable. I feel like I'm in a privileged position being in a middle management role in such a big company. So for example, I went to our women in, what was the big women thing recently? I can't remember. But one of our ladies in leadership at the time, she was one of the directors, took all the ladies in our part of the business. So there was maybe 60 of us in there, and they're all talking about how it is to be a woman in the workplace. And it quite quickly turned to how hard it is to be a mum in the workplace, and the challenges around being a mum, or the challenges around menopause and stigma and awareness. And yeah, to be the person in the room that goes, okay, well, I'm going to say the thing that makes everybody uncomfortable, and I'm going to sit here and breathe my feelings while tumbleweed goes across the room, and the subject is changed, and not allow that subject to be changed. That's the position that I'm often coming from. Like I'll take things in that show that I'm childless and encourage conversations. I'm kind of standing there in the leadership and saying, we're in a position of influence, and we need to be aware of bias and unconscious bias, and be inclusive from that place. And yes, it's uncomfortable. So many people were like in the room, and I was like, this is the sorts of things that it takes, and we need to lead. We need to cast this positive, lead by example, really. Yeah, so one of the challenges is sometimes feeling uncomfortable, trying to get comfortable in the uncomfortable. Another challenge is, sharing my own story with such a broad spectrum of people. As I say, I had like uncountable messages of support and wanting to know how people can get involved and stuff. But I also had, I've been trolled before once for it. I didn't have the stats for guys at the time. Sorry, guys. So some guy emailed me, what about the men? And I was like, that's kind of not the point. So we had an email exchange, whereas I was terribly polite and sort of, yes, definitely, fully agree. And what we're going to do fully includes men, but I don't have the stats for it. And this guy just wanted to be angry. I think he had kids anyway. He just was someone that, sometimes people just want to create a bit of a drama. And yeah, this week I only had one email like that, but actually it was really, I don't know if you'd class it under the toxic positivity, Katie, that you mentioned, but yeah, oh, thanks for sharing your story, but I hope you haven't given up on children. And then shares this big thing with me about how amazing adoption is. So it gives me the opportunity to kind of politely point out that they've missed the point. And did you miss the sentence where it said, my doorbell's going, so my dog's getting involved. Or maybe they're just angry on my behalf. But it gave me the opportunity to point out politely that you'd missed the point, and that I feel quite integrated with my position. But if you sent this email with your big long story about this is the best thing you ever did, by the way, you already had biological children, so it's not the same. I was able to say this wouldn't land well with someone else. And I hope that it helps you for me to let you know that. And if you want to talk about it and understand why, then I'm really open to that. So it can open you up to, you know, re-experiencing some of your own triggers sometimes. But I always treat these as healing opportunities. Hi, honey. Some other challenges, time. You know, when you're so passionate about this kind of thing, you know, putting the time aside. The roles that I do in my corporate job is voluntary, so sort of putting it around other things that I'm doing as well. But I think, yeah, I'm just taking a breath. Like, there's a variety of challenges, and I just think it's opening my eyes, the different ways that I can go about it, listening to you, Katie, and you, Sam. And I think it's going to give me the opportunity to add more into what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, to overcome some of the challenges that I'm experiencing there. So just thank you really for your shares and your commitment. And I might be tapping you up after the after the webinar to get more information so that I can have an even more rounded approach to what I'm doing. Because I think a lot of when I reflect on some of the things that I'm hearing myself say, it's my resilience and passion that gets over the challenges. Yeah, so thank you. It's good to reflect on that.
No, thank you. Goodness, I've actually been writing my own notes from things you've been saying. I just got so many ideas, and yeah, thank you so much. I did just think of another obstacle that I've come up against, and I wonder if you have both experienced this. So one organization in particular, there was a lady there and she was in HR and she was really wary of the fact that I might come in and say, okay, you have to ban baby showers, you have to ban scan email, you know, and she was like, oh, you're going to ban conversations at all about pregnancy and babies, aren't you? And then that's not fair on parents. So it links in again, I guess, to that kind of parent, non-parent segregation and whether you're going to take away from parents. But what I find is a good way around this is obviously in the training, I'll talk about managing the triggers rather than banning. And I give ideas about what you can do. So I actually think some people feel refreshed in that I don't tell them to ban. So one example I give actually is with a baby shower, have one. Just take it off site and make it optional. And don't do it in work hours in an open plan office, you know. And I think that people who might not fully get it before the training, they're like, oh, okay, this is okay. We're not banning anything here. We're just being mindful that other people might feel really triggered by that. So yeah, that was just one thing that just came to me. We've got our last question now, and then it would be great actually if we could look at some of the Q&A, if we've got some time. So Sam, are you happy to just give any kind of advice, recommendations to anyone else who, would like to raise awareness about childlessness in their own workplace? Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sharing some of your insights.
Yeah, so I think, more companies are introducing fertility policies and inclusion initiatives. So that's a way to kind of start the conversation with HR. If you don't, like me, don't want to be the face of childlessness and to talk about your own personal journey, that is a way to kind of to start these conversations, and just kind of requesting that World Childless Week is part of a diversity calendar, or create a diversity calendar if you don't have one. I think is a reasonable request, really. And certainly if Mother's Day and Parents' Day is on there, then World Childless Week should be too. And I actually worked with Jodie Day to create an email template, which is available on the World Childless Week site in the Get Involved section. So use it as a basis to start the conversation. You can adjust it to what you want to say, but it's just a kind of easy way to get started. And it also has some really good references to show that, it's been properly researched. And a huge thank you to Jodie and everybody who has contributed that research. It's so invaluable. And it talks about the benefits to the organisation, about building a more inclusive culture, helping to attract and retain talent, that kind of thing. I mean, and which HR manager doesn't want that for their organisation? So this should be something that they should be keen to hear about. I just feel it's a start in the conversation without exposing too much of the emotional, vulnerable bits if you don't want to do that. So that's my main recommendation.
Yeah, that is such a good idea. And thank you for that template you've put together. And I'm sure many people will love to use that, and like you say, it takes the pressure off of them and that kind of exposing part of it. So yeah, that's fantastic. Rachel, how about your recommendations and advice?
Yeah, so just echoing what Sam said there, and like you, Katie, I'm like, yes, I should like some of this, please. So I wrote a couple of notes down on this one, because yeah, we're all so different, aren't we? We are different people. We live in different places culturally. The workplaces that we'll be in are different. So it's not going to be a one size fits all situation. So one of the things I would suggest is just consider your personal workplace and what sort of engagement might work best. These things, they don't always happen overnight. So, just starting small, every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. So yeah, just consider your workplace and what might be a good start. Because there's always going to be different routes in. Like my workplace has social media, other people contacting HR directly, that kind of thing. Obviously, we've got this diversity and inclusion groups. So yeah, have like a little bit of an explore around, and just consider your opportunities. I think something else that kind of goes in line with that is consider where you're at and what place you can give from, how much time you have, where you're at in your own journey, and what you have to offer and give at the moment. And again, just remind yourself that every little bit helps and counts, and that you're not in it alone. And there's always people in our community that are available to reach out to for support, whether it is information, whether it is someone that can just sit and listen to you while you're like, holy moly, did I really just get this email? Whatever it is, we're all in it together. Do something that feels sustainable. I think this is a personal reflection. I'll kick off all guns blazing, and then I'll be like, oh, I might be in this for a while. So yeah, going with something that feels good and right to you, because I don't think there is a right and wrong, and I don't think there is doing too much or too little in this kind of perspective, honestly. And yeah, there's lots of resource around us and lots of people around us. So yeah, don't be scared. It can only be good.
Thanks, Rachel. I'll just give some advice from myself, and then we can have questions if Steph's okay with timing. So yeah, just to echo the point about really giving the statistics and the research in this area. So obviously you can go in and say you're personally affected if you feel comfortable to, but I think using the evidence is key. So one thing that I do provide, so in my pamphlet, I've got all the services that we offer, and it's got a business case. So it's got all the stats and the effects, but also the implications on workplaces if they don't acknowledge this. So, things like discrimination cases, I don't think many employers are aware of that, but differential treatment based on your parental status is, unfair. Um, so yeah, it's quite good as well because in the pamphlet it does have testimonials from other workplaces. But if you don't use the pamphlet, just sending Mr. Workshop's website. And I think sometimes just employees seeing other companies that have engaged, they think, oh, maybe we should too. So that's always quite a nice, a nice way in. And also it kind of, as I said earlier, it third persons it, you're using research and evidence. So in my pamphlet, so I've cited some things from Dr. Robin Hadley, Dr. Crystal Wilkinson, and also some, stuff from my own PhD. And employers seem to really like the academic side of this. I didn't realize how much actually, because I've been in academia so long and I'm working across all different. But yeah, I realized just how much they value it. And they often really like the fact that I'm, using that to inform. And I use it in all of my training as well. And I just think it helps. People can't argue against it if it's factual. So yeah, you kind of want a bit of fact. And, obviously you can share your personal journey if you want to, but you don't have to. And I think that's key. You can really, oh, have you seen this research? And especially with CIPD getting in on this. I mean, that's another great, thing to use. But yeah, thank you so much, both. Honestly, it's been amazing. I feel like I've taken away a lot, from the work that you've done. And it's just been really nice to have this conversation as well. And thank you again to Steph. So I don't know, Steph, if you're happy for us to just have a look at some questions.
He said we've got another 10 mins if we want to. So
Oh, she's generous because I know she's back to back. So thanks, Steph. That's amazing. Should we have a look at the Q&A? Okay. Okay. Oh, there's a question about like the funds. It is difficult, isn't it, if companies don't have funding for these things. I would recommend, putting that business case to them and even using things like the stats, how many people this is affecting, but also that this is going to cost you in lost talent, turnover, presenteeism, absenteeism. So I have all of this in my pamphlet. I don't know if Sam and Rachel, you agree with that, but I think just putting it forward as a business case can really help with that. And if they still don't have funds, there are still things that you can do to engage with the topic, aren't there? So you can do story sharing. You can still have a banner for World Childless Week. That doesn't cost, you know what I mean? There's still things you can do. I don't know if you had other ideas for that first question.
yeah, so I it just reminds me of one of the things I was mentioning about we have like a at work social media, and I've been able to work with the alliance that I'm working with to share the banner and share the enamel pins and share anywhere online that I've done shares, whether it's about my story or it could be about statistics and stuff. So all of these things are free for the company, but things that people can do. And if we get hearts and minds involved, then they're more and more likely to do it. Would be part of my answer on that one.
Thank you. Sam, did you have anything to add?
No, that sounds great.
Thank you so much. There's a question here about pregnancy loss and childlessness being addressed differently. Yes, they are addressed differently, I'd say, formally and informally, actually. I'd say with pregnancy loss, there's still minimization there and not the validation that it is a loss, but it's more recognized as a bereavement than childlessness for sure. And it does have, the kind of, because I think people could see it as more of a tangible loss. if that makes sense. So there might be more sympathy afforded to it, but there are also legal protections as well for pregnancy loss, which, to be fair, many organisations aren't aware. That's one thing I help them to recognise. So yeah, you're protected under the Equality Act, and because obviously pregnancy is a protected characteristic. So you do have to make sure that the leave that someone takes is protected under, you know, pregnancy related sickness, not general sickness. But for childlessness, it's really hard because actually people say, do you have a childlessness policy? And it's not always that easy, is it? Because actually, yeah, it's more about adjusting your own kind of policies that you've got already and making sure that you're signposting people to support. Um, Rachel, I know you spoke about policy. Do you have a set policy for childlessness, or have you just put links into existing ones? How have you gone about that?
So we don't this I think this is what I was saying earlier. We don't have a policy for reproductive health or fertility treatment or pregnancy loss or anything. Um, and that is one of the things that I've got on our agenda for next year to raise and hopefully resolve.
I see, yeah. Because I think it's easier to have a pregnancy loss policy and an infertility policy than it is childlessness. So it's difficult, but you can still do policy review and practice review. Um, but yeah, I just think that because the stats are so similar actually for both, it's really important to address both. But I would say they are treated differently. Okay, I'm just going to read through the next one. Oh, the question about baby photos going around. That's really hard. I really liked actually what came up yesterday on the webinar. Yeah, just about actually moving those to the end of a meeting. So again, it's about the not banning, isn't it? I think that's really powerful. So you're not silencing anyone, and yes, you're welcoming, but you're recognizing that it's triggering for other people. So I really liked that recommendation yesterday. I don't know if you had anything to add, Rachel or Sam.
I think it's an interesting one because we all experience it. Um, I think the more awareness that I've been raising at work, the more people have actually been considerate of, okay, well, maybe we will put it to the end of a meeting then. Or maybe I will check in and say, do you want to do you want to have a look at this picture of my new child or not? Um, so yeah, a lot of the shares that I've done have raised awareness, but yeah, I'm also in a position now where I'll just let people know. Um, and yeah, I don't feel in a place where I want to see that in this moment. You can be kind of compassionate about it while still operating your own self-care and your own boundaries. And people will be responsible for their feelings around that. I'm not responsible for their feelings. So if I'm not doing it from a bad place, then I need to trust the process of life and that they're getting the medicine that they need, and so am I.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Sam.
Yeah, no, I think it is a really difficult one. But it's about raising awareness that we are here too. And I've found that I've now been able to kind of have a conversation with my manager about this, and that he says that it was a complete blind spot for me. I didn't realize it at all, and now he's just a bit more sensitive about it. But absolutely, it's not about stopping these things, but just to say, well, we're here too. Perhaps, can we include something about our lives as well? And that's all shared, so that we are included. Because otherwise, we're kind of excluded from this life experience. But what about our life experience? Can we share that? Perhaps that's another idea.
Definitely. Thank you. And this was a question about, sharing your own status, in the workspace, and managing this where other people could be triggered. So I'm thinking about colleagues that might also be going through this journey, come to the end of their journey. I think it's a really good question because I'm asked that a lot, actually. Um, you might have things to add, but what I usually say is people can always opt out and you can offer a recording of training. But what I find mostly is that people are not triggered by the awareness raising, for childlessness. They're more triggered by pregnancy announcement emails, someone announcing a pregnancy in a meeting. So those things are so much more triggering than having the actual session. And what I sometimes recommend, because most of the training I do is online, is allowing people to have their cameras off and change their name, ask questions in the chat, ask questions afterwards privately. I always offer that. And also I've started doing e-learning so people can digest it in their own time, but also just giving people the chance to say, no, I'm not ready for this. Don't make it mandatory. And just allow people their own time just to, yeah, when they're ready. Did you have anything to add to that, Sam or Rachel?
No, I think you put that beautifully, Katie.
Oh, thank you. My croaky voice. It's been like, yeah, I've done quite a lot of training this week, as you can imagine. So I'm losing my voice now. Last question here is, how easy is it to get an invitation to give training in a company? The stigma, biases, stereotypes are so big that I know it is so difficult to get through decision makers. Yeah, easier than what I thought, to be honest. If you've got that business case and you've got someone usually in that company who's, using their personal story as well, it can just be amazing. And usually, I mean, I think there was only one situation where someone said, "Oh no, we're not ready for this," but I think it was actually to do with funding, to be fair. Um, so yeah, just present that business case, give the evidence, and show other organizations that are doing something. And I think most are on board. It's usually the smaller companies that it's difficult, but there are other things that they can do, and I think that's important to let them know that, you know. We've got some. I'm so sorry, I haven't had time to look at the chat because yeah, I will go through it. I don't know if there's any questions that have come up there.
I think more comments.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading through these actually. Mm.
Oh, some good shares as well. Great.
This is brilliant. But yeah, unless there are any other questions, we should let Steph have a little break. I think she's on it. I don't want to leave, but I'm just aware that Steph is so flat out. But thank you everyone again for coming and engaging. And I've certainly taken away so much from these conversations. Thank you to Sam and thank you to Rachel. You've been amazing. And the work you're doing is just invaluable. I honestly take my hat off to you both for sharing your experiences as well. It's really brave. As I said, I usually third person a lot. Um, but yeah, and just thank you again, Steph. Have a nice break for 15 minutes. Have you got?